Some of the best minds in the world bringing you some of the best knowledge on TRS Clips. I think what Schwarzenegger and Stallone did there, it was Hrithik and John Abraham, early 2000s. Like they set the tone for how the ideal men should look, and it inspired like one or two generations after that. But I want to actually ask you about Hrithik a bit. How did this happen? Because that's how a lot of Indians have got to know you initially, as the person who kind of transformed Hrithik. I remember there was this one photo of him on the front page of Bombay Times where he spoke about a transformation. And that's where he really spoke about you. I can't remember when this was exactly, but it was roughly like
2011.
11, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start training, Hrithik?
It was probably around that time, at the end of 2011, because I came earlier in 2011 to launch a book that I'd published. And Simon & Schuster, the publishers, wanted me to do one of those launches here in India. And once I did that, our mutual friend Jag Chima gave a copy of that book to Hrithik. He read the book and he was in a bad way at the time. You know, he'd just come out of a major injury with his back. His doctors had told him to be bedbound for a couple of months, and he had been. And then he asked if I would be interested in transforming him, because he was about to cancel or postpone the shooting of Krish because he wasn't able to get in shape for it. But when I gave him a consultation, I could see that the guy was definitely serious, very intuitive. And so decided to kind of transform him. And, you know, we'd set up 12 weeks, but we managed to transform in about 9.5 weeks because his body responded so well.
I'm assuming that his body responded well because he's had years of training behind him.
Yeah, it's that. And he's got years of training behind him, but his body responds really, really well. And he's got such a small frame, like the smallest frame I've ever trained.
You mean like a skeleton?
Yeah, skeleton for sure. You know, very small wrists, very small ankles, very small knees, joints. So a little bit of muscle on him looks a massive amount of muscle. You know, so when we got in shape for Krish, you know, he looked his absolute biggest, but he was only like 68 kilos.
Wow,
very,
really?
and yeah, the guy's 6 foot. So there wasn't much to him, but when we were able to pump up specifically for different scenes, carb load, reduce the fluid, you know, he looked very three-dimensional because of the fullness of his muscle bellies, which is genetic as well, along with very small joints.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here. And I'm literally carrying the chatter that goes on in Indian gyms and carrying it to Kris Gethin himself. So what they say is that with actors who need to get into shape, you would assume that these guys are huge guys. These guys are the biggest guys in the gym. But the situation in reality is that the camera adds a few pounds firstly. And secondly, if you see those same guys in real life, they probably, like if they have a t-shirt on, they'll probably even look skinny. But the moment the t-shirt is off, they look huge. And the camera just picks up that hugeness as even huger hugeness. Is that true?
Well, yeah, there's a few things to it. Of course, you know, they're going to get the lighting just right. Now, if I'm there on set, but Hrithik's got a great eye, actually. So the lighting that you would usually have in a scene is very different to allow the physique to pop. You want more harsh lighting. So a lot of people want soft lighting to make you look smoother, younger. You got to go the opposite when you're trying to enhance the physique. So that's going to be one aspect of it. And for every scene, for instance, with Krish, he only looked like that for a few hours. And then the next scene where he has to be topless, we would leave that another week because then I'd have to carb deplete him all over again and then carb load and then pump up and get rid of the fluid from underneath the skin. So it's quite a process to look like that for a few hours. He's not going to look like that all year round.
Gotcha. Why don't we talk about this that you spoke about, the what'd you say, carb
loading
and depleting? And by depletion, you mean the fluid in the body?
Well, we carb deplete so we don't eat any carbohydrates for several days. Well, maybe as long as a week.
Okay.
So no oats, no rice, no potato. It's just protein and fibrous carbs. So that would be vegetables, basically, like broccoli, lettuce, cucumber. So, you know, you do that for a few days to completely get rid of all the pump or the glycogen in the muscle. Okay. And then once you're completely depleted, then we fill it up really, really hard. We load hard. and then eat a lot of carbohydrates. Like he was on about 800 grams of carbohydrates, and that's a lot. I'd get bodybuilders on that, but his body just takes a lot of carbohydrates. So when he then did some pump ups, some exercises, the muscles just filled and filled and filled. And with that carbohydrates, it pulls the fluid from underneath the skin that makes him look even leaner and more ripped.
So when does this process of the 800 grams of carb loading happen? Like right before the shoot?
I like to do it 3 days before. So I will load the hardest 3 days before. Then I'll look at the physique the next day to see how many carbs we could probably push into him the next day and the day following. A lot of people do it the other way around. They'll carb load the day before, but then you could possibly spill over where you look softer the day before if that body doesn't take in the carbohydrates that you think it would. Like he takes in more carbs than me when it comes to carb loading. So everyone's different.
Wow. How did you figure this system in life? Like, as in, did you customize it for him, or is it like a standard system you follow as a coach?
I followed that as myself when I competed in drug-free bodybuilding for 10 years. 10 years. And I got as high as second in the natural world championships. And I was competing every year. So I was using myself as a guinea pig because I didn't have any coaches. I wanted to learn myself how the body would react. No one's going to know me myself better than I would, you know? So a lot of it was through trial and error and then having other clients and trying different protocols on them.
I mean, I'd love to know that when you're taking on a Bollywood project, you have trained other stars other than Hrithik as well. What is the brief given to you? In terms of, I'm assuming that the director or the art director, someone will tell you that, listen, we want the body to look like this, Kris. So how do we go about it? There's a lot of Indian coaches watching this where, their clients tell them that, okay, I want a body like Hrithik in this movie or like John in that movie. So this is sort of a 101 for them as well. And if you can boil it down to the basics, that would be even better because there's teenagers watching this as well.
It's basically, I like to learn what the scene is. If the scene is like action and that person has to do something powerful, explosive, maybe it's fighting someone, then I want their physique to look bigger, stronger, more imposing and fuller, bigger. So then I know what sort of carb loading process, depletion process, how much to pump up the physique. But let's say if it's a dance or a romantic video or something like that, then I know the physique needs to look a little bit more slender, a little bit more symmetrical and balanced, less imposing. So then we don't push it as hard.
Okay. So you keep an end target of how you want the scene to look like in your mind.
Yes.
And then everything from the diet to the workout program is altered based on that.
Exactly. It's mostly nutrition based.
Okay.
And mostly, from a pump up beforehand base,
Gotcha.
how much you're going to pump up. But everything else previous to that is pretty much the same. It's just like the last 3 days, everything changes.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out the entire episode and also check out this playlist that we've curated just for you.